Hello, this is Jeremy Elkins with Untreated Art. I have a short video for you today of making an estuary charcuterie board using live edge figured maple and a forest green resin. I also want to talk about a few challenges I had along the way, so let's get started. Okay, welcome back. Today we just have a small charcuterie board that we'll be burning. And compared to the large tabletops I've done in the past, I use a different burner for small pieces. This charcuterie board is roughly 24 inches in length by 11 inches wide, not very big. That doesn't give me a whole lot of distance between the ground and the positive electrical probes. Due to that, I'm using my lower amperage, higher voltage burner so that it doesn't just arc out, but it actually burns the rivers in between. Before I started burning this piece, I made sure to surface it flat and give it a quick sand with 80 grit random orbit. This gives me a nice clean, flat surface to work with. After I burn the main river down the center, I start to branch out with the smaller tributaries. I won't be able to add too many rivers because of the small surface area, but I try to squeeze in as many as possible. I struggled more than a few times to get the rivers to start burning due to the density of the curly maple grain patterns. This is not unique to maple. I've ran into it in every species of wood that I've tried to burn. Whether it be a dense wood species, punky wood, a knot, or any other grain feature, I just have to work through each type of obstacle and find the best way to burn the rivers. In this case, I'd add a lot more water and sodium bicarbonate in order to get the electrical probes to burn properly. Once I'm finished outlining the rivers, I go back and hit each one to make sure that they're the proper width and depth before stopping. Due to the brightness and intensity of electricity, it's really hard to get up-close shots. I did, however, manage to get this slow motion video which shows from the point of turning on the electricity until it becomes a river of fire. At this point, I'm almost finished with the entire burn process. What you're seeing burning right now is the large central river. It will flow from the top of the board where a wood handle will be cut out to the lower right hand corner of the board. All of these smaller tributary rivers will flow into that large central river. It will definitely stand out from the rest once finished. If you've seen any of my other videos or seen pictures of my other work, you'll notice that that is a common theme that I play out on most of my pieces. Here's an up-close view of that large central river, and this is just before I will stop the entire burn process. You can see how deep and wide it has become. I made sure to stop before too long, so I didn't just burn a hole right through the entire slab. After a week or so of allowing the slab to dry back out, I could continue on with the process. First, I ran it through the planer a few times, both on top and bottom, to get the slab flat again. Heat and water, which I just finished using, tends to warp wood. Using a nylon wheel brush on an electric drill, I was able to remove out all the charred wood from the rivers. For this epoxy pour, I went with a darker forest green, which I plan on softening up later on with a brighter emerald green and a pearl silver. Because the largest river is less than a ½ inch deep, I didn't need to use a deep pour resin, and I was able to use just a standard tabletop resin. This will speed up the cure process quite a bit. Instead of waiting weeks, you only have to wait a few days before you can start surfacing and sanding. I also make sure to use a food-safe resin on all of my charcuterie boards. I use painter's tape and hot glue to seal off all of the open-ended rivers so that the resin doesn't just flow off of the board. I only poured the resin into the large and medium-sized rivers, not worrying about the smallest ones. Now as I scrape off some excess epoxy, that will flow down into those smallest tributaries. This will also help mix together those 3 different resin colors that I poured. The reason why I didn't pre-mix all of those colors together for the main pour was I wanted them separate but softly blended together. Now that all the excess epoxy has been removed and all the small tributary rivers filled in, I went ahead and just mixed it up a little bit more to get the right color that I was hoping for with these 3 blended mica powders. After I'm finished, the resin will settle down as it slowly cures. That'll create more of a flow art to the rivers. For the next 4 to 6 hours, I will continually come out and hit it with an open flame to pop any of the air bubbles left behind. Since this is a tabletop resin I used and it cures relatively fast, I was able to surface it just 2 days later. I only sent it through the planer a few passes because I didn't want to remove those finer, smaller tributaries. Next, using the scroll saw, I started cutting out the wood handle at the top of the board. Before starting, I sketched out with a pencil what I'd like the handle to look like. I also drilled a few holes in the center that I'll use to slip the scroll saw blade into for cutting out the inner portion of the wood handle. I didn't have any issues cutting through this inch-thick maple, but I do break quite a few blades when I'm cutting 1.5 to 2-inch thick walnut. The scroll saw does a great job of cutting out the handle, but I do go back with some hand files to shapen it a little bit further. You can notice that the handle slopes down to the right, and that's because the live edge was included into the handle. Normally I wouldn't do this, but the size of this board kind of dictated where the handle would be. Using a 1/4 inch bevel on the router, I make sure to hit the top, both the outside and inner portions, along with the bottom, to kind of give it that nice curve feel when holding the handle. I have made a lot of charcuterie boards with these handle cutouts, and every single time I feel like I've spent way too much time on them compared to the rest of the board, but I do love how they turn out. After shaping the handle, I'll run through all the grits all the way up to 400 grit dry sanding before moving on to a little bit of wet sanding. I used 600 and then 800 grit for wet sanding, and I made sure not to place too much water on the board because I didn't want it to warp. Once it dried back out, I knocked down the grain and then cleaned it up for the final finish. Because this is going to be used to serve food on, I used a mineral oil, which is food safe. I apply a generous amount of oil and let it really soak in before wiping off the excess. That wraps up making this piece. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing your comments or any questions you have about making this piece. My name is Jeremy Elkins with Untreated Art, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel @Jeremy Elkins for future videos.